You know that moment. You finally hit software update. You hold your breath. And then you realize the giant, flashy new OS, the one with that massive jump in version numbers, it feels less like an upgrade and, well, more like a high-stakes, heavily marketed beta test. We've all been there, especially this year.
It's become this annual ritual of digital pain, hasn't it? After that radical shift to iOS 26 and macOS Tahoe 26, which was, let's be honest, famously unstable.
Oh, full of glitches.
Exactly. So the question wasn't if we needed a fix, but when we'd get one that actually mattered.
And that is our mission for today. We are doing a deep dive into the promised stabilizer, the 26.2 point release for iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. We're synthesizing, the huge volume of expert reviews, the community buzz to figure out...
Is this it?
Yeah. Is this the stability savior that fixes the foundation? Or is the software just, too fundamentally flawed to be polished with a few patches?
And this deep dive is so necessary because this whole generation of software, with that huge jump in number, skipping all the way to 26 to align with the release season, it was based on this super ambitious liquid glass design philosophy.
Right.
And that tension, between the radical design and just practical day-to-day stability, that defines everything we're seeing right now.
And what we've discovered is fascinating. The immediate, most vital takeaway is kind of buried in the forums. After months of frustration, the community consensus is that 26.2 is actually pretty stable.
Finally.
Users are finally seeing a measurable reduction in the memory leaks and the animation stutters that made the first releases basically unusable for a lot of people.
Which sets up this perfect contradiction that's really at the heart of this whole discussion.
Let's just call it the quality control paradox.
Yeah.
Why 26.2 should have been 26.0.
This is the core criticism, right?
Yeah.
That Apple's annual OS release schedule is now so rigid, it essentially uses the 26.0 launch as a paid public beta.
Right.
And users feel like they're paying for the privilege of troubleshooting for a multi-trillion-dollar company.
The community sentiment on this it's fierce. I read this quote that went viral, and it just perfectly sums up the frustration.
Okay.
It's like sitting a Stanford grad and offering him a $200 million salary and saying, hey, sweet newbie, go ahead and mess around. We'll have to sell you expensive memory options so you don't need to optimize.
Wow, that's vivid. And a little exaggerated maybe, but it gets the point across.
It totally does. It suggests that core engineering discipline of, optimization has been lost in favor of just maximizing revenue from memory upgrades.
But that kind of blunt feedback, it really reflects a deep desire for the stability and the polish we used to associate with Apple. They feel this level of performance, the stability we're seeing now in 26.2. That should have been the starting point back in September.
But to be fair, we have to highlight the tangible gains because they are real. On the macOS side, 26.2 specifically tracked down and killed several major memory leaks.
I saw that.
And that delivered a very noticeable performance boost, especially for people with the base model machines.
I found this great anecdote about this. One user shared that their 8GB M1 MacBook Air machine that notoriously buckles under pressure was suddenly flowing in everything. They were running multiple heavy programs, 2 active user profiles all at once, and only saw these rare, minor stutters. That's a massive operational difference.
And what's interesting is, this isn't entirely new, even if the user base is louder now. Some of the more experienced users are citing history.
Right. They're pointing out that macOS 10 wasn't really stable until Jaguar, a year or 2 later.
Exactly. And that Cheeto is essentially a paid beta.
So this suggests the current issue is kind of an inevitable pattern of maybe a side effect of these super fast yearly OS cycles. And maybe it's exacerbated by the whole post-COVID remote work shift that makes coordination so much harder.
So the question is, do we just lower our expectations for the initial release every year?
I don't think people are willing to do that.
No. It's that conflict between speed and that old Steve Jobs era obsession with detail. And speaking of obsessive details that went wrong...
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
We have to talk about the design choice that is driving a civil war in the community. The intentional design flaw. The 3-corner radii rule.
The battle of the rounded rectangle. This is such a fascinating peek into the current design team's priorities. It seems to favor, let's say, technical rationale over just immediate visual harmony.
The visual annoyance is just that the corner radii, the roundness of the app windows, they're completely inconsistent from one app to the next. One window is sharp, the one next to it is almost bubbly. It just makes the whole desktop look disjointed and sloppy.
And here's where it gets really counterintuitive. That inconsistency, it is not a mistake.
Yeah.
It is by design.
Wait, what?
It's enforced by a highly specific three-tiered rule within their new liquid glass guidelines.
So they wrote code to make sure the corners don't match.
They did. The size of the rounding, it depends entirely on the functional elements you see in the window.
Okay, lay it out for us. What are the rules?
Rule 1. Apps with both a title bar, A and D, a sidebar, so think Safari or Mail, these the largest radius, 26 points.
Okay, the big round ones.
Rule 2. Apps with a title bar and a toolbar, but no sidebar, they use a medium radius, 20 points.
A little tighter.
And Rule 3. Apps with just a title bar, like TextEdit, use the smallest radius, 16 points.
That is painfully specific. So you're looking at your browser, which has the biggest, roundest corners right next to some little utility window with the tightest, sharpest corner.
Exactly. And the technical rationale, apparently, is that forcing that huge 26-point radius on a simple app like TextEdit would make it look bloated.
But who cares about the rationale if the end result just looks messy? The common user response is that it's just a failure of aesthetics. You shouldn't have to know the layout rules to feel like your OS is cohesive.
It's a perfect illustration of this internal struggle at Apple. Functional purity over perceptual simplicity. The 26.2 update does offer some refinements to the liquid glass look. Quicker, bouncier animations.
Yeah, I saw that.
But that core corner radii issue, it remains a lightning rod for criticism.
So if Apple is struggling to manage its own internal design rules, what happens when external forces like governments start dictating the product roadmap?
That is the perfect pivot. Our next section is the regulatory divide. Features driven by geopolitics. What's so fascinating here is that the biggest changes that impact user choice aren't coming from Cupertino. They're coming because of legal compliance in specific global markets.
Let's start with Japan, which is seeing some sweeping, really fundamental changes.
Japan is requiring Apple to offer choice at the foundational level. First, users in Japan will now get a prompt to select a preferred default search engine.
Oh, right during setup.
Right during setup. The options include Bing, Google, Yahoo Japan, Ecosia, DuckDuckGo. Most of us globally don't get that choice.
And even more critically,
the big one. Apple is laying the groundwork in Japan to let users choose a different default voice assistant, not Siri, that can be activated by the physical side button.
So you could have Gemini or Alexa on the side button?
You could. That is huge. The side button is the prime real estate on the device. Allowing an alternative there fundamentally changes the phone's core interaction model. Japan is also getting support for alternative app marketplaces, much like the EU.
And speaking of Europe, let's touch on the AirPods live translation feature. That was specifically delayed for the European Union. Why was that?
It was held back to complete the engineering work needed to comply with the Digital Markets Act, the DMA.
Right.
The DMA is all about ensuring interoperability and preventing platform monopolies. So features that are deeply integrated into the OS, like live translation, they have to be engineered not just for cushion, but for compliance with these strict open platform rules. And that just takes extra time.
Meanwhile, back in the US, Texas is setting policy. So iOS 26.2 is preparing for the App Store Accountability Act. What does Texas require?
It mandates that Apple accounts created in Texas have to confirm age 18 or older, and it requires enhanced parental consent systems for the App Store. So you have a single software update with features dictated by Tokyo on search, Brussels on market access, and Texas on age verification.
It really raises the question, when your product decisions are forced by external factors like this, how much freedom does Cupertino actually have to set its own course for innovation?
It feels like future innovation is going to be defined by legal battles as much as it is by engineering breakthroughs.
Okay, let's pivot from compliance to pure professional power. macOS 26.2 also released a set of highly specialized features focusing on the absolute high-end pro user, which brings us to our next topic, high-performance clustering. The Mac Pro's nail in the coffin.
Yeah, these features are all about leveraging the unique power of Apple Silicon. So macOS 26.2 introduced Thunderbolt 5 clustering. This is a low-latency feature that lets you connect multiple Macs together,
turning them into a single computing cluster.
Exactly. Historically, that kind of high-speed direct connection was reserved for, internal backplanes in specialized tower systems.
Like the Mac Pro.
Like the Mac Pro. Thunderbolt clustering basically democratizes that capability. And the update also enables full MLX access for M5 Macs.
And MLX is Apple's own machine learning framework.
Right, so giving developers streamlined access to the M5 chips, the highest-end chips right now, That dramatically speeds up AI development.
And the community reaction's pretty clear. These powerful niche software features, they just further erode the need for the Mac Pro.
Well, why buy the most expensive tower when you can cluster multiple powerful general-purpose Macs into a super system?
The dedicated tower is becoming obsolete because Apple Silicon has just made the standard Mac so immensely powerful, the gap is closing fast.
It really is.
But before we move on, I love that even while they're engineering these complex systems, they can still nail simple usability. I'm thinking of that Mac-exclusive feature from 26.2, EdgeLite.
EdgeLite is pure genius. It's a virtual ring light for your video calls, and it's only on Apple Silicon Macs. It uses the perimeter of the display to light up your face.
It uses the screen itself for a perfect soft glow.
And the best part, the little usability tweak.
Yeah.
It smartly dims the light when your cursor hovers over that section.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you can click on the window underneath without being blinded by your own ring light.
That's the attention to detail we used to expect across the board. It feels like a little moment of the old Apple shining through.
Okay, let's wrap up with the quality of life updates that provide immediate value to every listener. These are the fixes that make 26.2 worth installing, even if you don't care about corner radii or compliance laws.
Let's do a quick run-through of the most useful everyday fixes and features. First up, the Reminders app got a huge boost with a new urgent toggle.
We've all set a reminder only to have focus mode just swallow it whole. This toggle fixes that by triggering a standard system alarm that is designed to break through focus modes.
No more excuses.
None. And if you listen to podcasts, you'll love this next one.
Yeah, the podcast app now uses AI to automatically generate chapter markers for basically all shows, even if the creator didn't add them.
Seriously, how's the quality?
People are saying it's so good, it's hard to decipher the difference between the AI ones and the human-made ones.
Yeah.
It's a massive navigation win.
Wow. Okay, on the health side, there's a subtle but important change to the sleep score grading.
Yes, part of the watchOS and iOS updates. The score ranges have changed, so high is now 81 to 95. It used to be 70 to 89.
Why the change?
They said it was to better reflect how people might be feeling after a night of sleep.
Yeah.
Basically making the data more relevant instead of giving you a false sense of accomplishment for a mediocre night's rest.
For iPad users, a huge one. The restoration of drag-and-drop multitasking.
It's back, thank goodness. You can drag an app icon from the Docker Spotlight right onto the screen to create a split view or slide over. Pro functionality has been restored.
And finally, a notable security addition for AirDrop. AirDrop codes.
Right. When you're sharing files with unknown contacts, you now get an additional verification code, which adds a layer of security. But, and this is important, be aware of the trade-off. Once you verify, that code allows transfers with that device for a 30-day period.
Got it. And security is the most critical note to end on because this update, regardless of how you feel about the features, is absolutely mandatory.
It really is. We have to emphasize this. This release patches over 20 security vulnerabilities. And most critically, it addresses 2 WebKit bugs that Apple says may have been actively exploited in attacks against targeted individuals on older versions.
And WebKit is the engine that powers Safari and basically all web content in apps. A bug there is a critical vulnerability for the entire system. You need to update immediately.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, the 26.2 update is essential. It brings performance back to where 26.0 should have been. We've seen this tension between, the legacy Apple obsessed with every pixel and the current reality of external regulation and internal complexity.
And we're left with a system that is functional, full of clever niche features, but one that still struggles with its basic visual identity. The question is, where does the roadmap go from here?
And if the most significant changes affecting user control, like choosing your own assistant or search engine, are now being driven by powerful regulatory mandates, is the future of operating system innovation determined more by bureaucrats in Brussels and Tokyo than by engineers in Cupertino? That's something worth pondering the next time you tap Update.